From garage sales to thrift store aisles, we hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day, flipping finds, turning profit our way. Pure Hustle Podcast guides our quest, learning tricks to be the best. On eBay we make our name, reselling dreams, winning the game. Pure Hustle Podcast guides our quest, learning tricks to be the best. On eBay we make our name, reselling dreams, winning the game.
Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Rolando, and we're here for our Monday mini-sode live.
Yeah, we love our Monday minis. They are a ton of fun because it's our chance to get to interact with a lot of our viewers. And we promise you, after the success of our last live where we had several people from our Discord on, we are going to do a lot more of those where we have people, other resellers, mostly people in our Discord coming on, joining us. Because it's fun having a third, fourth, fifth, maybe sixth person to add some input and some stuff, because the comments are great. We love for you guys to add in comments, but actually getting to see somebody and talk with them and hear their stories is the best.
No, I agree. And I always appreciate you got people in the chat right now. We got two dope sons. We got Zizzle Pug 3. We got the Picky Picker, and we have others watching our episode right now. And always grateful for everybody that joins us on these lives. And, you know, the big thing I'm seeing right now on X, on Twitter, there's a lot of chatter about this, and also on social media, is there's a lot of gating and VeROs that have been taking place lately. So if you're wondering what those terms mean, on Amazon, gating is you've been selling a product for a long time, or maybe you try to sell a product and out of nowhere Amazon says, nope, can't sell that product anymore. That could happen beforehand when you're trying to sell something, or that could happen after the fact when you've been selling something. It could be thousands of dollars you've already sold. It could be millions, and Amazon says, yep, we are kind of done selling this item. We'd like you to send invoices, or sometimes they may not even send invoices. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. And then on eBay has VeRO, where you might have been selling something for a while, or you're trying to sell something. Maybe you went into the outlet saying you sourced a bunch of, let's say, Puma at the Puma outlet store, and then you find out that Puma has been asking eBay to VeRO items. And so you had 100 items that you bought, you're listing on eBay, and then eBay sends you a message that says all these items are VeRO'd.
Yeah.
And so
today we're gonna talk about the positives and negatives of VeRO, and we're gonna quickly go through the positives, VeRO and gating, because there are reasons why these companies do these things, platforms like eBay and Amazon. So we want to give it some credit and recognize that even as buyers, we're a lot of times grateful for some of these protections that are in place. But then again, we're going to look at the negatives, how they may be overstepping, and how it becomes obstacles for us as resellers. So one of our first ones here is, especially when we're looking at VeROs on eBay, is it oftentimes can be a method of preventing counterfeits being sold. Certain brands, they're very well known for having counterfeits, and they're trying to protect their brand. They're trying to protect the buyers from getting poor items or to get counterfeits or knockoffs. And so they do everything they can to protect their brand. And so they issue those VeROs. But again, this isn't always a good thing, right? Because although us as buyers want that buyer confidence, it also creates an issue of, hey, I have a real item. And I think a lot of times things like VeROs can be an actual infringement on the first sale doctrine. And so if you're not familiar with the first sale doctrine, essentially what the first sale doctrine says is when you purchase an item that's a copyrighted item, you now own that item. You don't own the copyright to that item. But if I bought a DVD, if I bought a pair of shoes, I bought those Puma shoes, and I decide I want to throw them away, I don't have to contact Puma. I don't have to contact 21st Century Fox. I don't have to contact and say like, hey, can I get rid of this item? Or I can transfer it. I could say, hey, Orlando, these don't fit me, but they fit you. I'm going to give them to you. Or I could sell them, right? Like I don't have to contact the copyright owner, the original person who owns the rights to that, in order to throw away, to discard, to transfer, or to sell those items if I legally purchase them. And so there is this gray area where it's like, yes, there's this protection, but is this actually hurting our right to that first sale doctrine?
Yeah, and I would say it right now, I'll say this on our long form podcast coming up. I don't think eBay has done enough to protect us. There should be no reason that eBay is allowing things to get VeRO'd. I just don't understand, because if the first sale doctrine is true, it should not be happening. And I understand you're looking for counterfeits, but I'm talking about like the small seller. I'm talking about the people that have 1,000 items in their eBay store, or 500, or maybe even less, or 2,000, 3,000. Like, people are getting VeRO'd. So you got to be careful. I would say, one of the things I want to talk about is make sure that if you are selling new items, it may be a benefit to you to cross post, right? And I'm not just saying that because we have a relationship with Vendu and a discount if you use our code Pure Hustle, but eBay may VeRO you, but you can still sell it on Poshmark, you can still sell it on Mercari. You may not be able to return the item, and so be aware that let's see here. So wow, interesting. This is a new one. So this is from Two Dope Sons. Said, I got a VeRO on eBay some years ago. It was Frida Kahlo items. Whoever runs her estate contacted me. I told her where I got them from. Never heard from them again. That's pretty crazy. I actually have a Frida Kahlo book right here. I can't get to it right now that I need to list. I don't think that's going to be VeRO because it's a book. But that's pretty interesting. So you got to be careful, because you never know. Actually, I've had there's a surf shop in San Diego over in Mission Beach, and I had one of their hats, and they're not like a big provider, right? They don't sell these en masse, and I had a hat that I picked up somewhere, thought it looked cool, and I got VeRO on that item, and I'm like, I don't know if that surf shop, I don't know if the algorithm picked it up, I don't know what it was. So you just gotta be careful.
That's good. All right, we got another question here. I think this is a good one. Somebody asked, do you think to fulfill something like a Costco order or to sell in another major department store, brands reach out to eBay to make their items legal to sell? Like a lot of times contracts, they want to be the sole seller of an item, right? Like if it's going to go into Walmart, they might say like, hey, but you can't sell it in Target or something like that. That's definitely possible. And that kind of leads to another potential positive of something like VeRO, or why it's in place. Not a positive for us necessarily as resellers, but kind of the why are they there? It's that brand control, right? Brands want to control how their products are represented, and also prevent unauthorized sale of their intellectual property. So if they do have that contract, if they're saying like, hey, in order for me to sell on this platform, or in order to make sure that, my products, like if I offer something like a warranty or something like that, that I know that my customers are getting the best, or that my contracts are legally going to be fulfilled, I can't have another store on eBay selling the product at a cheaper price, because then that's going to undercut, and that's going to maybe make me outside of my legal contract. So then that creates that gray area with that first sale doctrine. So that's a good question. I think that definitely could play a role in that.
I actually have a story with that, where I bought about 100 plus brand new boots from somebody that had display boots for like different stores up and down the coast of California. And I bought them, and he was like my connection. And I got a killer deal. It was like $10 to $20 for each, and I could sell them for like $100 a piece. And then I remember one year I reached out to him, and I'm like, hey, I'm ready to make that deal again. Can we make this deal? And he told me like, I can't. And I'm like, why? What happened? He's like, well, the company didn't like that these were being sold on eBay at a price that was less than, I think some of them I had sold for less than $80 or something, and they wanted to keep the price high. And so they said, no, he's like, I can't sell these to you anymore, because they find out it comes from me, it could possibly get me in trouble. So yeah, I agree. That's part of that brand control. But again, it's first sale doctrine. If you got it, you should be able to do what you want with it. And to me, this VeRO stuff does not make sense to me.
Yeah, and that leads to one of the problems that can come from this. One of the negatives is, think of small sellers. Like obviously, as big sellers, we kind of know which brands are potential for a VeRO. But if you're a new reseller, you might have no idea. Like when I first started selling, I didn't know you couldn't sell CPAP machines on eBay. And so like small sellers just starting out, they go to a garage sale, they see that some of these have sold on eBay already, because that's another issue is on top of not necessarily having the knowledge. But another quick point to mention here is that there's not always clarity, right? Like there's a lack of clarity in the process, not just for who could sell it, but like why there's inconsistent. Like sometimes eBay will allow a VeRO on an item and then other people sell it and there's no problem. And I talked on a previous episode why I think it's probably a good thing that they don't just have it automatic. Like as soon as you have certain keywords, you can't sell it, or a certain brand in there. Because that could lead to even more removal of things that are legitimate, that aren't necessarily the item that's being VeRO'd, but just because it has a keyword or something. But there is definitely lack of clarity. If you're a new reseller, or even if you're experienced and you haven't sold in a niche, you might not realize that a certain item is going to get VeRO'd. And yeah, if you go in deep on an item, if you paid up for like one item, or if you bought in bulk, that could really, really hurt you.
Yeah. So my encouragement is just be very careful, especially with the high end brands, especially if they're newer tags, right? Now, there are some situations like Chanel has some things where even if it's vintage, they like that brand control and they don't like you selling their items. But for the most part, it's usually new with tag items. I find that the issue that a lot of people run into when it comes to VeRO are items that they bought, like if you source at the outlets or you source at like Nordstrom Rack or any of those places, like you can run into those VeRO problems. So be careful with that. I wish I could say there's a sure way. I think eBay should be handling that. I think eBay, I see what Mike is saying, but I think there should be a thing that like, hey, that you should be able to type in something and find right away. Even if you're like searching, let's say you're looking for comps and you type in comps, there should be something that's like, here's your probability of getting VeRO'd on this item, right? I think that would be great because that would protect a lot of sellers. So I don't know, eBay, if you're listening, maybe that's something we could do. Now, the other side, right, on Amazon, it's been really bad lately. So we discussed this more on Wednesday, but the talk on the Twitter sphere is that there was mass gating that happened this past week on Amazon. So it was Nike, it was Puma, it was, if you sell like toothbrushes like Oral-B, Listerine, Crest, a lot of clothing too. And so you got to be careful. And if you're like dabbling in Amazon, like I wouldn't go all in. I wouldn't go all in unless you have an invoice, unless you have something to prove. So if you're buying stuff from like Marshalls or Ross or TJ Maxx, like unless you know it's a first sure thing or you can sell it pretty fast, you got to be careful, right? Because let's say Under Armour. Under Armour is one of those groups that got gated. Like TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Ross, they sell a lot of Under Armour, and there are some great profit margins if you find the right item. But let's say they decide to veer on eBay, or let's say they try to go to Amazon and you bought 100 of these, right? And those companies, they may have lenient return policies, but I think after a while, like it gets pretty crazy. Like you have to maybe return 10 at one store, return 10 at another store, but they do track returns now, where I do think you're going to run into the problem where they're going to deny you that return. So I would be very, very careful with a lot of those brands.
Yeah, and that's a big part of like that. That's the worst case scenarios. If you were like previously ungated and then become gated while you have inventory, that's like worst case scenario. But another issue with gating just in general is it's a barrier to entry for new resellers, right? Like if you're brand new to reselling or brand new to like FBA, like when I first wanted to start selling on Amazon, my wife and I spent a ton of time going to stores to do some retail arbitrage, and we found so many items that were profitable. And nearly every single one of them, it's like, oh, gated, oh, gated, oh, gated. And it's very difficult. It's that barrier to entry of like, what do I need to become ungated in this? And a lot of times it's a challenging process to become ungated. Sometimes it's as simple as getting an invoice. Sometimes there's companies you can go through where it's like, hey, you pay a certain amount, you get you buy enough bulk in them, and then you become like an authorized seller. And again, the reason why Amazon is doing this, and as a buyer, we can appreciate it, right? Like, how many times have you, Orlando, like bought something on Amazon and you've seen like in the comments where people are like giving a negative comment, not on the item, but the seller? They're like, this seller is selling like a bad product, or like this, nothing against this product, but the seller it came from, the box had, and so sometimes there's issues with the sellers. And so as a buyer on Amazon, like it's nice to know that it's not just any random person who's like going into a Walmart or Target who doesn't know what they're doing, who maybe are selling, like listing things wrong, or that 9 times out of 10, when you're buying something on Amazon, what you're getting is coming from a reputable source, even if it's a third-party source, because it's somebody with a track record. They know what they're doing. They've been ungated. So as much as it's a barrier to entry, it's like you get why they do it. Like you don't want just a random person, like your neighbor that you just taught about reselling, to all of a sudden be sending stuff into Amazon and be doing things wrong and you be getting bad product. That could be a problem. And then everyone's like, I'm not going to buy on Amazon. You're getting junk. Who knows who you're getting it from? Most people don't even realize when they buy stuff on Amazon that it's not always fulfilled by Amazon, or that it might be fulfilled by Amazon, but it might be coming from a third party sending it in. They just think it's Amazon. And in a lot of ways, that's a good thing for us as resellers, because if they knew it's like, hey, it's this guy named Orlando who, is just selling out of his house and he goes and he drives around to stores, they might be less willing to buy an item and have a little bit less confidence. So it is nice that there is that buyer confidence there, but man, is it a barrier to entry to those of us who do legitimately want to sell items and do it correctly.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I don't know. It's again, and I say this all the time. Make sure you have a contingency plan. Like, let's say you buy all these items, right? Make sure that you have a way to sell these items, right? If you get gated, maybe you have a connection locally that, hey, they'd be willing to buy these items from you and they can sell it in their brick and mortar. Or maybe you have eBay going on at the same time and you built up your eBay store in case anything happens. Because I've had to do that. I've had, I talk about the fingerlings, right? Like, I sold so many fingerlings back on Amazon when they were hot several years ago, back in, I don't know, it was 2017. And then out of nowhere, boom, Amazon gated me. So then I had to go on eBay and I had to sell them, and I sold them for less, but I still was able to be profitable on some of them. But you got to make sure you have a backup plan, whether it's on VeRO, whether it's on Amazon. You got to protect yourself. So when it comes to eBay, do what you can to ensure that your items, right, you have the ability to offload them somewhere else. If you get VeRO, there's no sure way. They have this huge list that you can Google eBay VeRO, but even then, you're not guaranteed anything. And yes, do people sell VeRO items all the time? They do. So eBay has no sure way to fix the problem, but you can protect yourself and make sure you have contingency plans. Same thing with Amazon. I've been selling on Amazon for over a decade, and I still out of nowhere will scan something and I'll end up gated. Something that I was ungated for years, I end up gated. So you got to be careful with that. I say if you're new, be careful going deep on some items, because there's people right now on Amazon that are $1 million sellers that overnight their life changed because they no longer can sell those items. They can't pay for their warehouse anymore. They can't pay their bills, and they're in a whole lot of trouble. So be careful out there. And by the way, if you just go, you can go on Reddit, you can Google. There's ways to find out what are those brands. I wish there was like a way that you can go on Amazon and go, hey, these are items that get gated all the time. But I will tell you, like Nike, it happens a lot. Under Armour, it happens a lot. Sony, it happens. There's a lot of brands out there. So be careful with all that. Anyways, outside of all that, it's been a great Q4. Hope your sales are going well. Make sure if you're on eBay, you're still listing. Make sure on Amazon, you're sending that 1 or 2 last shipments to FBA and go on merchandise fulfilled, or whatever way makes you profitable. With that being said, thank you everyone for joining us. Make sure to be real,
Be relevant,
and be reselling.
Peace.
Sunset, it's a brand new day. With our eyes on the prize, we're on our way. Hitting garage sales before the crowd, searching for treasures, making us proud. Through the aisles of thrift stores we roam, finding pieces of history, bringing them home. From old books to watches, we see their